She took my recipes and called them hers, so I shared the one story she couldn't fake. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Lillian, and here I share stories, thoughts and moments from my friends. The day I saw my daughter on TV holding my recipe binder and calling it her original work, I stood so still in my kitchen, even the kettle stopped whistling. She wore a coral blouse, and that lipstick I always said made her look too cold. Her voice was smooth, media-trained now. She smiled, perfectly rehearsed. "These recipes have been in my family for generations," she said, "but I've modernized them for today's kitchens. This is my passion. Food with soul." The camera zoomed in on the binder. Red gingham fabric cover. A stain in the corner from where I dropped beef bourguignon in 2002. My handwriting. My page protectors. The tabs I made from packing tape and index cards. Chicken, pies, sweets, holidays, memories. I felt something inside me wrinkle and dry. She didn't mention my name once. Not once. I'm Susan Moore, 66. I've been cooking since I was tall enough to stir a pot. My mother called it feeding with feeling. My grandmother just grunted and passed you the wooden spoon. For years, I cooked not for money, not for fame, but because it was the only place in the world where I felt useful. My marriage was quiet, my job as a dental receptionist dull, but in the kitchen, I mattered. People leaned in when I fed them. I started writing recipes down when my son was 5 and my daughter was 7. She hated onions. He loved anything that crunched. I'd jot notes on napkins, bills, even prescription receipts. I made a binder one winter when we couldn't afford a vacation. I covered it in leftover fabric and glued it crookedly. It became my archive of everything I couldn't say out loud. When my husband passed, I wrote my grief into the margins. When my children left home, I filled entire pages with notes on apples. Fuji, Gala, Braeburn, anything to quiet the silence. My daughter's name is Erin. She was always ambitious, sharp-tongued, headstrong, the kind of child who didn't just want an A, she wanted the curve changed in her favor. We weren't close, not in the way you dream of. She hugged me at Christmas and Mother's Day, but not always at birthdays. She never liked when I offered advice. "It's not the 90s anymore, Mum," she'd say. "People don't do it like that." After college, she bounced around. Marketing, then branding, then food consulting. She'd call when she needed something. The twins were sick, or her husband was traveling, or she had to pick my brain about seasonal dishes. I didn't mind. At first. A year before the TV interview, she came over in a rush. I'd just pulled a sweet potato tart from the oven. The smell of nutmeg clung to the walls. She stood in the kitchen, scrolling her phone, sighing loudly. "I need something," she said. "You always do," I smiled. "It was meant to be a joke. I'm pitching a cookbook/lifestyle concept. Think rustic modern meets health-conscious nostalgia. But I need content, real stuff, like heritage material, old-fashioned but elevated." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means recipes, Mum. Yours." I hesitated. "You want to use my recipes?" "Yes, but don't worry. I'll adjust the measurements, swap in some gluten-free flour, maybe rename a few things. Just need the bones, really." She never said thank you, just took the binder from the shelf above the microwave and tucked it under her arm. "You'll get credit, obviously," she called over her shoulder. I never heard what kind. Months passed. I asked about the project. She brushed it off. "Still in development. Waiting on feedback. You know how these things go." Then that morning, I turned on the TV and saw her on a daytime show, pitching her cookbook. Erin's heirlooms, generational recipes, reimagined. She smiled as if those stories were hers, like she knew why I always added clove to apple pie, because it reminded me of the hospital waiting room where my husband died, like she understood why my buttermilk biscuits call for only 4 turns of the dough, because 5 makes them too proud and not enough makes them fall apart. She didn't understand any of it. She just sold it. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. Instead, I turned off the TV, walked into my pantry, and sat down on the floor. I felt something strange. Not rage, not sadness, something cleaner, like the crisp inhale before a good bake. I whispered, "No." And then I whispered, "Not this way." That night, I dug through my closets and found the photo albums. Me at age 24, flour streaked across my apron. Erin as a toddler, licking mashed yams off her fingers. Notes from my husband in the margins of my old recipe drafts. Too salty or make this again, soon. I remembered who I was. I wasn't just a mother. I was the origin. I created a free blog. The design was clumsy. I picked a pink header and called it Susan's Table. I wrote my first post that night. Just a short one. I was born in a kitchen. Not literally, but close. My grandmother stirred collard greens with her bare hands. My mother made jam barefoot in August. And I have spent a life cooking not for applause, but because the scent of onions in oil means someone's still alive. This is where my recipes live. They don't belong in press kits. They belong here. Let's begin with the sweet potato tart, the one I baked the day my daughter stopped being mine. I attached a photo, not glossy, not staged, just the tart, a slice missing, real. I hit publish. That was the beginning. I posted every week. Not just recipes, but the stories behind them. Why I never use garlic in chicken soup. How I learned to fix over-whipped cream using only a spoon and a song. What my husband used to say when the pie crust split. That's just a crack where the love leaks out. Slowly, quietly, people found me. By month 3, I had 8,000 readers. Someone emailed me. "You don't know me, but your story about the peach cobbler made me cry in my office. I haven't spoken to my mother in 6 years. I just bought peaches." I printed it and pinned it above my desk. By month 5, a small publisher reached out. "We love the voice. It's so real. Have you ever thought of compiling these into a memoir?" I hadn't, until then. Erin called out of nowhere. "Hey," she said. Her voice was flat. "Hi. I, heard you're blogging?" "I am." She paused. "Look, some of my people saw it. They think it's confusing, brand-wise." I laughed. I hadn't meant to, but it slipped out. "Confusing how?" "Well, it's just, your version is a little raw. My platform's more polished, professional." "Ah," I said. She cleared her throat. "Maybe it's best if you don't post certain things. About the binder or the recipes. It's not a good look. For me." I smiled so wide my cheeks ached. And then "don't look." And I hung up. That night I wrote a new post. Someone once told me not to share too much. That truth is off-brand. But food is nothing without truth, and neither am I. So here's the truth. I once made chicken and dumplings for a girl who would grow up and forget why she loved cinnamon. But I haven't forgotten. And I won't let you forget either. I signed it, with clean hands and a full heart. Susan Moore. The post went modestly viral. Not the kind of viral with agents and headlines, but the kind where real people forwarded it to their sisters their cousins, their mothers, the kind where comments didn't just say yum, but said, I made this for my dad, who never liked casseroles, and he asked for seconds, or I woke up one morning to 217 new subscribers. I made coffee slowly, savouring the ritual, ceramic mug, 2 sugars, quiet porch. And then I opened my email. Subject line, feature request from Stirred Souls magazine. I blinked. Stirred Souls was one of Erin's media darlings. Sleek, tastefully minimal, expensive-looking everything. I clicked it open. Hi, Susan. We came across your blog and were deeply moved. Your story feels like a warm kitchen in a cold world. We'd love to feature you in our June issue. Mothers Who Feed Generations. Are you available for an interview next week? I reread it 3 times. Then I closed the laptop and went to bake cornbread. Erin showed up unannounced the next day. No knock, just the beep of her key code entry and her voice yelling, Mom? I was in the garden, knees in dirt, trimming rosemary. She stood at the top of the stairs in all black, blazer, slim pants, expensive flats, holding an iced coffee that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. Can we talk? I stood slowly. Sure. She followed me into the kitchen. The air was warm from a cooling pan of almond scones. She didn't compliment the smell. I saw the blog again, she said. And now, Stirred Souls? I didn't answer. She placed her coffee down too hard. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? We're supposed to be building a legacy brand, and here you are, making passive-aggressive posts with veiled references to me. I turned to her slowly. There's nothing veiled, Erin. I said what happened. She scoffed. You're blowing things out of proportion. You said I could use those recipes. I didn't say you could pretend they were yours. A beat. Her jaw clenched. I'm your daughter, she said. You're supposed to support me. I reached over and picked up one of my old cookbooks from the counter. Not the binder. I'd stopped keeping it out. This was a plain spiral notebook with food smudges and notes in every margin. I held it up gently. I supported you with every meal I made, every night I stayed up watching the twins, every time I said nothing when you rolled your eyes at me for not knowing how Instagram works. I have always supported you. I placed it down, but I will not disappear to make room for your spotlight. I'm done being edited out of my own story. She left angry. Didn't call for 2 weeks. But I could feel it brewing, the storm. So I got ready. I scanned every handwritten recipe I'd ever written. I backed them up to 2 drives in the cloud. I asked a neighbour's son to help me build a clean digital archive. I started adding a new section to the blog. Dish by dish, the stories behind the binder. For each entry, I posted a photo of the original page. Grease stains, smudges, notes and all, followed by the memory that birthed it. One post read, Corn pudding, August 1987. That was the night Erin came home with a scraped knee and a trophy for 3rd place in spelling. She cried because she hadn't won. I told her not all sweetness has to come first. Some sweetness stays, low and warm, like pudding. She didn't eat that night, but the next morning she had 2 servings for breakfast. And she smiled. Readers started commenting. This isn't just a blog, it's a memoir. I feel like I'm reading my grandmother's voice. Please keep going. My own daughter and I don't speak, but this makes me want to try again. I wept over some of them. I printed every one. Then came the podcast request. A woman named Jenna, warm voice and curly hair, ran a show called Kitchen Heirlooms. Stories from family cooks, forgotten kitchens, old world traditions. She wanted me on. We recorded it in my home. Jenna sat at the kitchen table, recorder on the lace runner. She asked questions softly, like they were spices added gently. And I told my story, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I told her about the binder, about the years, about Erin. I didn't name names, but I didn't need to. When the episode aired, it spread like fire under a closed door. Erin called again. She didn't say hello. You made me look like a thief. I was folding laundry. I placed a towel on the table and pressed the edge flat before answering. You took what wasn't offered. It's food, Mum. It's just food. No, I said. It was my voice. You didn't just use the recipes. You erased the woman who wrote them. She didn't respond. So I added, I've been erased before. By men. By bosses. By time. But I will not let my own daughter do it. She hung up. The publisher sent me a draft of the book cover, Susan's Table, Recipes and Remembrance from a Mother Who Cooked Through It All. Muted blue background. My hands in the photo, gently cracking an egg into a bowl. Not my face. Just my hands. I cried when I saw it, because somehow that felt truer. A month before the book went to print, Erin's cookbook faced backlash online. Someone had uploaded a video comparing my scanned recipe for cherry clove crumble to the version in her book. Word for word. The internet took care of the rest. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Erin disabled her Instagram comments for 2 weeks. On launch day, I wore my oldest apron and baked 6 loaves of banana bread. I mailed them to 6 people who had commented on my very first blog post, along with a handwritten note. You kept me going. May this feed you too. That night, my small-town bookstore hosted a reading. It was standing room only. Mostly women, some men, a few college students, 2 little girls sitting cross-legged with wide eyes. I read from the chapter titled, Burned but Not Wasted. The room went still when I said, some people think the stories behind a dish don't matter, that you can just change the flour and rename the pain. But I know better. I lived the heat. I tasted the salt. I remember the first time I kneaded grief into dough, and that's something you can't steal. Not with fame, not with silence, not even with blood. When I looked up, some were crying. So was I. Erin didn't come. But the next day, a package arrived on my porch. My old recipe binder. No note, no explanation. Just the binder. I held it for a long time. I could still smell cinnamon and thyme. I placed it back on my shelf, next to a copy of Susan's Table. I didn't hear from Erin for 3 months after the binder arrived. Not a call, not a text, not even a cold professional email like she used to send with "please advise" at the end of every sentence. Just silence. And for the first time in years, I didn't fill that silence with guilt. I filled it with life. Mornings became mine again. I made coffee exactly the way I liked it. Strong, with real sugar, not those packets of nothingness Erin once lectured me about. I started teaching a free weekly cooking class at the community centre. We had no marble countertops, no video cameras, no branding. Just folding tables, mismatched aprons, and the smell of garlic butter. Some nights we made old southern dishes that steamed the windows. Other nights I taught the basics, not just how to chop an onion, but when to stop stirring, when to trust your hands. I'd look around and see women my age laughing again. One brought her granddaughter. One was recovering from chemotherapy and said her sense of taste had come back just in time for peach season. They called it Susan's Circle. But to me, it was a table that kept growing. A few weeks later, I was invited to a university's Women in Food and Culture event. They wanted me to speak on culinary inheritance and narrative ownership. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but I stood at a podium wearing the same silver bracelet I'd worn the day I first cooked for my husband's parents in 1977, and I said this: "For too long, women like me were told that our stories only mattered if someone else told them better. But I've learned that recipes, real ones, are stitched with fingerprints. You can't photocopy a soul. You can't smooth out the pain and still call it pie." That quote ended up in a magazine. Right below it was a small caption: "Susan Moore, 66, food writer and community mentor." I clipped it, not to brag, but because no one had ever called me that before. Then came Erin's email. Not a call, not her voice, just a carefully crafted message sent at 11:43 p.m. Subject: "I don't know what to say. Mum, I've written this 3 times now and deleted it. Nothing sounds right. I know what I did, and I know it hurt you. I was selfish. I saw an opportunity and took it, and I told myself you wouldn't mind, or notice, or care, because that was easier than facing what I'd actually done. You didn't just cook for us. You wrote your whole life into those pages, and I used them like ingredients without labels. I'm sorry. I've lost clients. I've lost face. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because I miss you. And because my daughter asked me last night, did Grandma invent mashed potatoes? I didn't know what to say. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was anger. But then I pictured that small voice. Did Grandma invent mashed potatoes? And I remembered. Erin wasn't born callous. She was born hungry for approval, like I was, like so many women are. We just fed it differently. She fed it with ambition. I fed it with silence. Maybe neither of us was full. I invited her over. No ceremony, no camera, just lunch on a Wednesday. She arrived wearing sneakers and no makeup. She looked tired. She looked like a mother, not a brand. She sat at my kitchen table like she used to, both hands wrapped around a chipped mug. I placed a slice of strawberry bread in front of her, the kind she used to request for her birthday when she still let me bake for her. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me with glassy eyes and whispered, "It's still warm." I nodded. It always should be. And then we talked. About nothing, about everything. About the baby who didn't sleep. About the pressure she felt to be seen. About how she thought being big in the world would make her smaller fears disappear. And finally she said, "I thought if I said where it all came from, I'd be less." I reached across the table, took her hand, the one that used to tug at my sleeve in grocery stores, and said, "But that's the only part that makes it real." 2 weeks later, she posted something I never expected. It wasn't PR polished, it wasn't curated. Just a photo of the binder. Caption: "None of this was mine. It belonged to her. I forgot that stories feed us more than food ever can. If you ever cooked something from my book and felt love, that came from Susan Moore. And this is her table, not mine. I'm just grateful I get to sit at it again." It got 3,800 comments in 2 days. Not all kind, not all cruel, but honest. And for once, she didn't delete a single one. We're not perfect now. We're still learning. Sometimes I still feel the old ache when she talks too fast or takes up too much air, and sometimes she looks at me like she's waiting to be forgiven all over again. But we talk more now. She asks real questions. And last Sunday she came by with her daughter, my granddaughter, holding a piece of printer paper. "Grandma," the little girl said, "can you help me make this?" I looked down. It was my recipe for kitchen sink cookies, smudged, misspelled, decorated with crayons, and underneath, written in big loopy letters, "From Susan's table." That night, I posted one last blog entry. I used to think legacy was what you passed down in print. But I was wrong. Legacy is what people remember when they taste something and feel safe. It's the quiet moments after bitterness leaves the tongue and something sweeter lingers. It's not stolen, it's planted, watered, shared. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. My hands smelled like cinnamon. And I slept. Full.